You want to know how important Disney Plus is to the mouse? Well, Kevin Feige, who runs the crown jewel, I would say at this point, the crown jewel of the company, just introduced the first real MCU villain on the streaming service. That's incredible. Now, I looked back at Feige's comments about whether or not you have to watch the TV shows to follow the movies, and it turns out, ouch, he just said it about WandaVision. He was like, you don't have to watch WandaVision, but I guess that was the last free pass he gave mainstream audiences. And going forward, you're going to have to watch everything. That is a huge commitment. I think that a lot of us will have to be the unofficial Marvel Corps and fill in our friends while they wait for the movie to start, before and after. I talked about that with Black Widow, having to fill in the people I saw the movie with on the end credit scene because they did not know what was going on. They didn't even know Julia Louis-Dreyfus was in the MCU. So it's gonna be interesting. But so far, really good. But I think I'd be curious. I know a lot of you are hardcore WandaVision stans, and I'm sure you take that personally, that comment from him. But to be fair, some of you pointed out that coronavirus, the pandemic, really hurt the first two Marvel Disney Plus shows, and they weren't able to maybe go to do things to the degree that they had originally planned. And perhaps they're all meant to operate at the level of Loki, and that doesn't take anything away from WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it's very exciting for the future. Now, yes, I did say that this was the MCU's first real villain, and I said it because I meant it. Because while Thanos was certainly a step in the right direction for this villain-challenged franchise, a problem they're still having, look at Taskmaster and Black Widow, Kang is poised to be a long-term villain with character development, flair, and lots of screen time. And I have to say, as good as VFX are these days, you still can't connect with an entirely VFX character to the degree that you can a human one. Maybe, I don't know, Rocket Raccoon and Groot, but still, those are supporting. I don't know if they could handle lead roles. I think having a flesh and blood actor playing the villain is going to do wonders. I think they finally have a Disney villain for a Disney franchise. And hey, Disney is famous for their villains. This could be really exciting. Now, it's already exciting. Now, will he eventually go anti-hero like pretty much every popular Disney villain before him? Well, some versions of him will. That's the beauty of Kang. There's an infinite number of him, as he says in today's finale. But here's hoping, and I'm sure some will stay truly evil. And by the way, just think of the possibilities. Not only could you have good and bad versions of Kang in the MCU simultaneously, but you could have them in the same film or television show simultaneously. I mean, Quantumania could be really exciting. I mean, I can't believe they're trusting this to Peyton Reed. We'll see how it turns out, but it's starting to seem like it might be too cool to fail. So today, this video, I'm going to give you a little background on Kang from the comics and an idea of how he'll change the MCU going forward, including paving the way for Secret Wars. I know a number of people have been hearing that, and I'm starting to hear it too. So I didn't want to hear it because I really wanted Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion's coming, but it doesn't look like Secret Invasion's going to be the movie level event that maybe we had hoped. We'll see what they do with the Marvels, if they, how connected those are. But Secret Wars, I don't know how I feel about Secret Wars. I didn't read either comic event. There's one in the 1980s and also one recently in 2015. That was the Multiverse one. I know some of you were like, Secret Wars, and you're all excited about it. But I'm like, it's like Mad Max battles. We'll talk about it a little bit later in this video. But sell me on Secret Wars. If you're really into Secret Wars, I'd love to know why so that I can get excited about it too. All right, so let's start in the pages of Marvel Comics, where, once again, Kevin Feige, his most popular toys at one time unavailable to him, and so he's had to make do, he is now taking even more Silver Age characters and storylines and making them super cool. Like, really, you look at the source material and you're like, the Infinity Gauntlet? Oh my god, the Eternals? I'm still not sold on the Eternals, but, I don't know. Kevin Feige has yet to make a mistake, so it's probably amazing. So, it's like incredible. This Silver, it's hard to be a modern comic books fan and a Silver Age fan. I'm sure some of you are like, I'm doing it right now, Grace. But, it's, I think people tend to be either or. And I'm just amazed how, I'd be like, you want to adapt that character? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, wow, it turned out great. And here's the Silver Age Kang, introduced in Fantastic Four number 19, I believe 1964, and therefore has strong ties to that team because he originated as their villain. He is a descendant of Reed Richards, Nathaniel Richards of the 31st century, and he discovers time travel technology created by Dr. Doom and then decides to travel back to ancient Egypt because he somehow found out that En-Sabah-Nur was going to become Apocalypse, so he goes to pre-apocalypse times to make En-Sabah-Nur his protege. Now, I don't believe that any of those connections, Reed Richards, Dr. Doom, or Apocalypse, will probably be in the MCU. There might be maybe a little, but I think it's needlessly complex. You know, Kevin Feige likes to keep it simple, and Immortus already established in the finale that he created his own tech, not that he found it from Dr. Doom. And also, I think it puts I don't know, I guess it would be a cool way to introduce the Fantastic Four and Dr. Doom, but, you know, I think they deserve to be their own thing when they enter the picture. So the thing that's interesting, though, is that this gives you an idea of the tactics that Kang uses, right? He doesn't have any superpowers, but he knows who will and when they will get them. And he can insert himself into their lives to create loyal allies. Like, imagine if he were to go back in time and befriend one of the Avengers, who all of a sudden would be like, oh, Kang's my best friend, I gotta protect him, what are you picking a fight with my friend for? I mean, that's really clever. Now, in addition to fighting the Fantastic Four, Kang also has often fought the Avengers. He's a bit like a Magneto character, right? Who sometimes is their full-on enemy, and then other times is like, hey, Avengers, I need your help protecting the timeline from someone who's even worse than me, or there's an accident, stuff like that. Ravonna Renslayer also comes from the comics. She, in the comics, is a princess, so you can see they're making lots of changes. But, you know, Kevin Feige knows how to be just accurate enough that you feel like it's an adaptation of the source material, and you're also impressed with how he's able to adapt it. You're like, oh, it's not that, but it's so close that I'm impressed that you're that close. So anyway, she's in the comics as a princess who at first refuses to bow to Kang as he tries and takes over her world, but then she falls in love with him because it was like a 1960s, 70s comic. All right, so anyway, she and Kang throughout the years in the comics are one of those on and off again couples, particularly because they're time traveling and multiverse characters, so there's always lots of versions of them. So these versions are happy, these versions are in a relationship that they're not happy, you know, all that good stuff. That could be a lot of fun to play with. Now, Renslayer eventually dons her own suit of armor to become the Terminatrix, very cool name, and even runs Kang's empire for a while he's recovering from some injuries. I would love to see Gugu Mbatha-Raw become the Terminatrix. I mean, that would just be so great. I thought I didn't love her performance at the beginning of the season, but I thought in the last two episodes, particularly the last episode, I mean, just like the morning show, like she finishes these shows strong. So I'm very excited to see where her character goes next. Now, as for the most famous Kang variants, now, of course, Kevin Feige and company can create any variant they want. That's the beauty of variants. And Kang, you know, again, even said in this episode, Immortus did, that there's an infinite number of variants. But here are the most famous ones from the comics to keep an eye out for. So obviously there's Immortus, who Jonathan Majors plays in the Loki season finale. You can even see the similarities in the costume. Again, just enough that you're like, oh wow, you did that. That's great. Oh, it's the same. Oh, that's so cool. But it looks much better. Now, Immortus is the oldest Kang. He has gone through everything. He's seen everything that they've done, and he's able to look back and see the error of their ways. And in the comics, he actually goes to work for the TVA. He doesn't create the TVA, but I think that's good. Doing it this way gives, you know, Immortus, aka Kang, more of his own agency, just like they did for Wanda in retelling the story of Scarlet Witch. Now, eventually, his younger selves find out that he goes to work for the TVA, and they're disgusted. And there's a great line about calling him a simpering academic, which, you know, you can see shades of that in Jonathan Majors' performance. You know, I thought I wouldn't describe him that way, but I could see someone having that as a negative viewpoint of him if they were upset with it. You know, if another version of him was upset. It's a valid diss. But I saw shades of that in Jonathan Majors' performance. But also, as I said in my breakdown, I also thought he played the character fascinatingly as unpredictable, which is such an interesting quality, because how else would you mix things up if you were someone who, for the most part, always knew it was going to happen? You have to have variety somewhere, so you got to provide it yourself. I think that's brilliant. And we'll see how much Jonathan Majors varies his portrayals of each variant. How much of a difference is there between variants? There's got to be a through line, and Jonathan Majors is a strong enough actor to create that through line. So I'm very excited to see what he does. All right, so that's Immortus. Then there's the main version of Kang, Kang the Conqueror, who we see teased as a statue in the new TVA. See you soon indeed. His suit of armor is 40th century technology. Remember, he starts out in the 31st century, but he has time travel capabilities, so he pops up to the 4th century and gets himself a suit of armor. It increases his strength, it has energy, hologram, and force field projection, a 30-day supply of food and air. I don't think they're going to keep all of this, but just to give you an idea. And also it can control other technology. They'll definitely keep that. As many of you pointed out, this suit included a helmet, so perhaps Jonathan Majors can still end up blue after all. Look, his Immortus MCU costume, as I said, was beautifully adapted for not only live action, but modern times, so I have absolute faith that Kang is going to look phenomenal. I mean, Jonathan Majors is going to be wearing it, right? He's going to look great. Now, Kang also commands a time ship, which I'm pretty excited to see. Now, as for other versions likely to show up in the MCU, so those are the two we've already seen them. Now, there's Iron Lad. He is a teenage version of Kang who, horrified by what he will become, Immortus is horrified by what he was, and Iron Lad is horrified by what he will be. So that's funny to have be horrified from different ends of the lifespan. So Iron Lad decides to try and be a hero, and he pretends to be, another version of Iron Man. I guess technically they're all wearing armored suits, so that's cool. He didn't totally lie. He's like, I didn't call myself Iron Man Jr., thank you very much. And he is the one who actually forms the Young Avengers in the comics. And of course, we all know the Young Avengers are coming very quickly to the MCU. So don't be surprised if Iron Lad shows up at some point. One character, Cassie Lang, is even, now played by Catherine Newton, is in Quantumania. So, who knows what version, that's the beauty. You don't know what version of, Kang is going to show up in Quantumania. We just can't make assumptions at this point, which is so fun. Oh, I love it. Boy, that's cool. All right, then there's Victor Timely. This is too good a name not to use, especially because they've name-checked someone else from Renslayer's past who deals with this as well. So Victor Timely is a version of Kang in the comics who decides to hide out in 1901, who becomes a businessman, and over the decades he poses as his own heir. So he's like Victor Timely II, Victor Timely Jr., Victor Timely III, and so on and so on and so on. So he could already have been interacting with some of our MCU businesses, and we don't even know it. In fact, Kang has also posed as Mr. Griffin in the comics, CEO of Qeng Enterprises, teased in Loki episode 5, it's already here, who, as we already discussed, buys Avengers Tower from Tony Stark only for his true self to be revealed and to do battle with the Avengers. So that's already on the board, so I feel it's almost like a backdoor to some way to Victor Timely. Or maybe they could do it with the Victor Timely, such a great name. It's much cooler in my opinion than Mr. Griffin. Now back to Timely. Again, after Renslayer kills one version of Kang in the comics, she takes on the name Rebecca Tormenette, which we see on the diploma in the Loki season finale, and so she goes to live with Victor Timely. So she's like, I'll go be with another Kang who's nicer. So I think there's a real possibility that in the MCU there's a Victor Timely already in 2018 rather than 1901. Wouldn't that be just so cool? I mean, we just saw her for a split second. Who knows what her life is like? Now, the Kangs also sometimes form a group, as Jonathan Majors said they already did in the MCU. Now, the first group of Kangs was called the Council of Kangs, so maybe that's what he was describing of the first, narcissistic piece that they had achieved. But later, after Immortus uses that council to destroy the multiverse, which we kind of saw here, or heard about at least, he later goes on to form the Kang Collective. So keep an eye out for that. All right, so that's Kang's past in the comics. Let's take a look at his potential future in the MCU. So it turns out it was Sylvie, not Wanda, who recreated the multiverse by killing Immortus, who was pruning the timeline to keep it from branching out and creating variants, most importantly, variant Kangs. I think that's probably the simplest description of what Immortus was doing. Now, I believe so how does this work? Because it's very confusing about timelines versus alternate universes. It seems from the demonstration that he's talking about alternate universes because you have them stacked on top of each other. And also, to some degree, aren't they the same thing? Isn't a timeline an alternate universe? Because I think, I first thought to myself that Kang sees all of time happening at once because he's overseeing it. So anytime anyone does something that would create a new branch, they get pruned, the timeline is reset, and that's how you have multiple variants coming about. But how do you have someone like classic Loki or Kid Loki who've lived such a long time and gone so far off the path? Why would it reset to a degree to wipe that version of Loki from existence? So I still don't think they've done a good enough job explaining this to make it make sense. It's still, I would like to understand it. I guess we could just be like, they're variants, go with it. But I think it could be a little bit, I would like it to be locked down. But anyway, now we have that multiverse full of variants, and they can coexist and run into each other in other MCU projects, and that's exactly what's going to happen. First, you're going to see it, you're going to see it in What If, which is a multiverse animated series, which we thought was an anthology, and I thought it was an anthology too, and a lot of you were like, oh no, it's going to be, a whole bunch of multiverse stories that they're building to lead into Doctor Strange too. So I checked with my sources, and you're right, that's correct. So we have to pay very close attention to that. I don't know how they'll be able to bring that into live action maybe, but it's something to just keep in mind. Then, of course, there's Spider-Man No Way Home, where you're going to have the 3 Spider-Men. And one of you during the watch-along was like, when the timeline started to branch, one of you was like, can anyone spot Toby? And I thought that was really funny. Then, of course, Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness is self-explanatory, and Michael Waldron, who is the head writer and creator on Loki, is writing that script. And then Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, the only project that Jonathan Majors is confirmed for, but again, he wasn't confirmed for Loki, so he could show up anywhere at this point, and any version of him could. Now, in Quantumania, they can do both time travel and universe jumping, which is going to be like multi-dimensional chess. That would be crazy. But they do have 4 great characters to grapple with that: Scott Lang, Hope Van Dyne, Hank Pym, and Janet Van Dyne. So that could be really exciting. Again, I don't know about Peyton Reed handling this, but we'll see. And you could have multiple Kangs there too. And also Cassie Lang is going to really come on board there as well. So that's going to be a jam-packed movie. I don't even know if they have room for variants. We'll see. Then Secret Wars, speaking of variants, Secret Wars, I believe probably the 2015 event, because that's the one that was multiverse related. Otherwise, in 1984, that led to some cool things like She-Hulk joining the Fantastic Four and the introduction of the symbiote suit for Spider-Man, which would become Venom. But otherwise, the 1984 Secret Wars event sets up Battle World and the Beyonder, and then therefore the Beyonders, and then they come back in 2015 and they bring heroes and villains again to fight it out on Battle World, but this time from different multiverses as well. So you have a bunch of variants, and that was the way the comic book itself was. So I heard that that's what they're marching towards, actually somewhat pretty quickly. Maybe that'll be the next Avengers movie. Maybe the next Avengers movie will be Secret Wars. So were you familiar with Kang before today, or is he brand new to you? Either way, what do you think? And what do you think of this intro and what's potentially in store? Share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.